I never imagined I'd find myself here, sitting in the quiet of my kitchen in Worthington, Ohio, confessing something so taboo, so unlike me. My heart pounds. My palms are sweaty as I force the words out. They've been swirling in my head for months. I want to experience being with a black man. The silence that follows is deafening. My husband, James, stares at me, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth, his blue eyes wide with disbelief. I can see the gears turning in his mind, trying to process what I've just said. You're saying what his voice is low, cautious, as if he's not sure he heard me correctly. I swallow hard, forcing myself to meet his gaze. I've been thinking about it for a while now. I just want to know what it would be like. James sets his fork down carefully, his expression unreadable. So, you're saying you want to cheat on me? His voice is calm, but there's an edge to it. No, I say quickly. That's not what I mean. I love you, Jim. I don't want to lose you or hurt you. It's just, this curiosity has been eating at me, and I don't know how to make it go away. He leans back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. So, what do you want? A free pass to sleep with someone else. The way he says it makes it sound so wrong, so selfish. But isn't it better to be honest about my feelings than to hide them? I don't know. I admit, I just had to tell you. I couldn't keep this from you any longer. The tension in the room is suffocating. Finally. He exhales a long breath and shakes his head. I don't even know how to respond to this. Emma. My name is Emma Thompson. I'm 34 years old, and I've been married to James Carter for nearly a decade. We live in a cozy suburban house in Worthington, Ohio, with our 2 dogs, Milo and Daisy. We met in college, me studying English literature, him majoring in computer science. Now, James works as a software engineer, and I'm a freelance writer, managing our home while working on articles and short stories. James is the quiet, dependable type, solid as a rock, the kind of man you can build a life with. And that's exactly what I did. After graduation, we married, bought this house, and settled into our roles. James is everything a woman could want in a husband kind. Loyal, hard-working. He's never given me reason to doubt his love. But as the years passed, our marriage started to feel predictable, like a well-worn routine. The excitement we once had faded, replaced by the steady hum of daily life. I didn't realize how much I missed that spark, until I started noticing other men, black men. Specifically, I'm not proud of it, but something about their confidence, their strength, their energy captivated me. It started as harmless curiosity, but over time, it grew into something more. I tried to bury those thoughts, to keep them locked away where they couldn't hurt anyone, but they kept resurfacing, stronger each time. Finally, I knew I couldn't keep this from James any longer. That night, after the initial shock of my confession, we sat on the couch in silence. I could tell he was struggling to find the right words. Finally, he turned to me. If this is something you really need to do, maybe we can talk about it. I stared at him, stunned. You're really okay with this? I didn't say I'm okay with it, he said quickly. But I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. I don't want to lose you. Emma, if this is something you need to be happy, I guess we can figure it out together. His words hit me like a ton of bricks. The last thing I wanted was to hurt him, yet here he was, trying to support me in the most selfless way imaginable. It made me feel guiltier, but it also made me love him more. I don't deserve you, Jim, I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. You're my wife, he said simply. We're in this together, for better or worse. I leaned against him, resting my head on his shoulder. I didn't know what the future held, or if this crazy idea of mine would destroy everything we'd built. All I knew was that I'd opened a door I couldn't close, and there was no turning back. The next morning, I woke with a strange mix of relief and fear. The weight of my secret was gone, but it now hung between James and me, heavy and awkward. We went through our daily routine: coffee, breakfast, a quick goodbye before he left for work, but a new tension lingered. As I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my toast, I wondered what would happen next. James said we could figure it out together. But what did that even mean? 2 days later, I got an unexpected answer. My friend Sarah Mitchell called out of the blue. Sarah's an event planner, always in the know, always hosting parties or spreading gossip. We hadn't spoken in a while, but her voice was as breezy as ever. Emma, you've been on my mind. How are you doing? I hesitated. Sarah and I weren't close enough for me to spill my personal drama, but something told me she might be able to help. I'm okay, I said carefully, just working through some stuff. Her voice perked up with interest. What kind of stuff? I bit my lip, debating how much to share. Finally, I tested the waters. Have you ever wanted to try something new in your marriage? Something different? There was a pause. Then she laughed. Oh, honey, every marriage gets boring after a while. What are we talking about here, role-playing a threesome? Not exactly, I said, lowering my voice even though I was alone. I've been curious about being with a black man. Sarah didn't miss a beat. Well, that's intriguing. Does Jim know about this curiosity of yours? Yes, I admitted. We talked about it. He's trying to be supportive. Wow, she said, clearly impressed. If you're serious, I might know someone. His name's Marcus Hayes. He's a personal trainer at my gym. Gorgeous, confident, single. I don't know if he's into married women, but I could introduce you. My heart skipped a beat. You're sure he wouldn't think it's weird? Sarah laughed again. Marcus isn't easily spooked. Trust me. Want me to set something up? I hesitated for a moment before answering. Okay. 3 days later, I sat in a coffee shop, nervously sipping a latte, waiting to meet Marcus. Sarah had arranged everything, and while I appreciated her enthusiasm, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to do something irreversible. When Marcus walked in, I spotted him immediately. He was over 6 feet tall, with a muscular build and dark skin that seemed to glow under the soft lighting. His confident stride turned heads as he approached my table. Emma, he asked, his deep voice smooth and warm. Yes, I said, standing to shake his hand. You must be Marcus. That's me. He flashed a dazzling smile that made my stomach flutter. As we sat down, I couldn't help but notice how easy he was to talk to. He had a way of making me feel at ease, like we'd known each other for years. We talked about our lives, our interests, and eventually, the reason for our meeting. So, Sarah says you're curious, he said, leaning back in his chair, studying me with an amused expression. My cheeks warmed. You could say that. And your husband's okay with this? He's trying to be, I said. Marcus nodded, his smile never wavering. I respect the honesty. Most people wouldn't have the courage to have this conversation. let alone act on it. His words caught me off guard. I hadn't thought of myself as brave, but hearing him say it made me feel less like a villain in my own story. By the time we finished our coffee, I felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation. Marcus agreed to meet again, and though nothing had happened yet, I could feel the pull of something inevitable. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Well, I smiled to myself before typing a reply. He's interesting. What I didn't say, what I couldn't say, was that for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. The week after meeting Marcus felt like a blur. I went through my daily routine, writing, cleaning, walking the dogs. But my mind was elsewhere. Every time I thought of him, a thrill ran through me, a mix of excitement and guilt. James seemed to notice the change in me. He didn't say much, but his glances lingered longer, and his questions about my day carried a curious edge. I tried to act normal, but I couldn't fully hide what was happening inside me. When Marcus texted me 3 days after our coffee meeting, my heart skipped a beat. Hey Emma, how about a training session at the gym? I'll show you a few things. It'll be fun. I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to say no, to end this before it went further. But a bigger part of me craved something new, something different. I couldn't resist. Sure, I replied. The gym wasn't far from our house, but it felt like a world away. As I parked and stepped inside, I felt out of place among the toned bodies and clanging weights. Marcus was waiting at the front desk, wearing a fitted black tank top and athletic shorts that showed off his sculpted physique. Ready to work, he asked, flashing that radiant smile. I nodded, feeling both nervous and excited. Let's do it. He led me to a quiet corner of the gym, away from most of the other clients. Over the next hour, he guided me through exercises, his hands occasionally brushing against me as he adjusted my form. Each touch sent a jolt through me, and I found myself hyper-aware of his presence, the warmth of his body, the soothing rhythm of his voice. You're doing great, Emma, he said. His eyes locked on mine as I struggled through a set of squats. Thanks, I gasped. When we finished, he handed me a towel and a water bottle. You're a natural, he teased. I laughed, feeling a flush of pride. I don't know about that, but thanks for the help. As we stood there cooling off, the air between us shifted. Casual chatter faded, replaced by something heavier, charged. You're full of surprises, he said, his voice low. My heart pounded. Yeah, most people wouldn't have the courage to do what you're doing. I didn't know how to respond, so I just smiled. But the way he looked at me intense, almost hungry, made it clear words weren't necessary. Emma, he said softly, stepping closer. If you want to stop this now, this is the time to say so. I should have said yes. I should have thanked him, walked out of that gym, and never looked back. Instead, I shook my head. I don't want to stop, I whispered. He didn't hesitate. Before I could second-guess myself, his hands were on my waist, pulling me closer. Our lips met, and everything else melted away: the gym, the other people, even the weight of my guilt. All that mattered was the fire between us. That kiss led to more. Over the next few weeks, Marcus and I met whenever we could, always careful to keep our encounters discreet. At first, it felt like a dream, intoxicating, thrilling, unreal. But as the initial excitement faded, reality crept in. Every time I came home to James, guilt crashed over me like a tsunami. He didn't ask where I'd been or who I'd been with, but I could see the questions in his eyes. He trusted me, and I'd betrayed that trust in the worst way. One night, as we sat on the couch watching TV, he turned to me. "You've been happier lately." I froze, unsure how to respond. "What do you mean? You just seem lighter," he said, studying me. "I'm glad." His words felt like a knife to my chest. I wanted to tell him the truth, to confess everything and beg for forgiveness. But the thought of losing him, of destroying the life we'd built, was too much to bear. So I smiled and said, "Thanks, Jim. I'm just trying to take better care of myself." He nodded, satisfied, and turned back to the TV. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my world was teetering on the edge of collapse. The excitement of being with Marcus was like a drug, addictive, all-consuming. Every touch, every stolen moment felt like a secret world that belonged only to us. But the deeper I fell, the heavier the weight of my choices became. James grew more attentive, leaving notes on the fridge, offering to cook dinner, suggesting date nights as if he was trying to rekindle the spark I'd let someone else ignite. One evening, as we sat across from each other in a cozy Italian restaurant, guilt overwhelmed me. James spent the meal reminiscing about our early days, reminding me of the man I'd fallen in love with. "Remember our first anniversary?" he asked, his blue eyes sparkling. We barely had enough money for that weekend at the cabin, but we made it work. I tried to smile. "Of course, it was perfect. And now we're here," he said, reaching for my hand. "I know things haven't been exciting lately, but I want you to know I'm trying, Emma. I really am." Tears pricked my eyes. "I know, Jim. I really appreciate it." But the words felt hollow, a weak attempt to hide the truth tearing me apart. The next time I saw Marcus, I couldn't keep the guilt from spilling out. We were at his sleek, modern apartment, a world away from my quiet suburban life. As I sat on his couch, staring at the city lights through floor-to-ceiling windows, I broke. "This is wrong," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't know how much longer I can do this." Marcus, sitting beside me, leaned back and studied me with calm, sharp eyes. "What's going on?" "Emma, everything," I admitted, burying my face in my hands. "I love my husband. Marcus, he doesn't deserve this." "I never said he did," Marcus replied, his tone even. "But you're here for a reason, right?" I looked up at him, my eyes brimming with tears. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You're exploring a part of yourself you've ignored for too long. That's not something to feel guilty about." His words were gentle, but they didn't ease the ache in my chest. A week later, James surprised me with a weekend trip to a cabin in the woods, like the one we'd visited for our first anniversary. He'd stocked the fridge with my favourite snacks, planned hikes, and even brought a bottle of Shiraz, the same wine we'd shared years ago. As we sat by the fire that evening, sipping wine and watching the flames dance, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could find our way back to each other. Maybe this didn't have to end in disaster. "I want this to work, Emma," James said, his voice steady. "No matter what, you're the most important thing in my life." Tears streamed down my face as I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his embrace. I wanted to believe we could fix this, but deep down, I knew the damage had been done, despite my efforts to pull away from Marcus. The pull between us was too strong. We continued meeting in secret, each encounter leaving me more conflicted. It wasn't just the physical connection that drew me back. It was the way he made me feel alive, desired in a way I hadn't felt in years. But secrets have a way of surfacing, no matter how carefully you hide them. One afternoon, as I left Marcus's apartment, I spotted a familiar car parked across the street. My heart sank when I realized it was James. He was sitting in the driver's seat, his face pale and pained as he looked at me. Our eyes met, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then he started the car and drove away. Panic surged through me as I called him, but he didn't answer. By the time I got home, his car was in the driveway, but the house was eerily silent. "Jim," I called, my voice trembling. I found him in the living room, sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. "Jim, I can explain." "No," he said, cutting me off, his voice cold and distant. "I don't want to hear it." Tears streamed down my face as I stood there, helpless. "Please, Jim, let me explain." He finally looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of hurt and anger. "How long, Emma? How long has this been going on?" I couldn't bring myself to answer. "That's what I thought," he said bitterly. For the first time, I realized the full extent of what I'd done. I'd shattered the trust we'd built over a decade, and there was no way to put it back together. "I think you should leave," James said quietly, his voice breaking. "Please, Emma, just go." As I stepped out the door, the weight of my choices crashed down on me. I'd crossed a line I could never uncross, and now I had to face the consequences alone. I spent the night in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying everything in my mind. James's face, etched with pain and betrayal, haunted me. The reality of what I'd done was suffocating. As the sun rose, I knew I couldn't hide forever. I had to face the mess I'd made. I returned home late the next morning, my stomach churning as I stepped through the front door. The house was silent, the kind of silence that felt like a presence in itself. "Jim," I called hesitantly, my voice barely above a whisper. He was in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a mug of coffee. He looked up as I entered, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "I didn't think you'd come back," he said, his voice flat. "I couldn't stay away," I replied, tears pooling in my eyes. "Jim, I'm so sorry." He set his mug down and crossed his arms on the table. "Sorry for what?" "Emma. For cheating on me, for lying, for destroying our marriage." The anger in his voice was controlled, but it cut through me like a blade. "For everything," I said, my voice trembling. "I know I hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know how much I regret this." He stared at me for a long time, his expression unreadable. "Why? Emma, why wasn't I enough?" His question hit harder than anything else. I struggled to find words to explain the unexplainable. "It wasn't about you," I said finally. "It was about me. I felt lost, like I wasn't enough for myself. I thought doing something crazy, something different, would make me feel alive again. But it was a terrible mistake." His jaw tightened, and he looked away. "Do you want to save this marriage?" "Yes," I said quickly, my heart aching with desperation. "I love you. Jim, I know I don't deserve a second chance, but if you'll let me, I'll do anything to make this right." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know if I can trust you again. Emma, trust is everything. And you broke it. I know, I whispered, but I'll spend the rest of my life earning it back if I have to. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he stood and walked to the window, staring out at the backyard. I need time, he said finally. Time to figure out if I can get past this. If we can get past this. I nodded, though the thought of waiting, not knowing if our marriage could survive, terrified me. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. James and I lived in the same house, but we might as well have been strangers. He avoided me as much as possible, and when we spoke, the conversations were short and strained. I cut off all contact with Marcus, deleting his number and blocking him on every platform. It was the least I could do, though it felt like too little, too late. Sarah, who had unwittingly facilitated the affair, called me after hearing the rumours. Emma, what happened? She asked, her voice full of concern. I messed up. I admitted. I don't know if I can fix it, she sighed. I don't condone what you did, but if Jim's willing to give you another chance, you need to fight for it. Don't give up. Her words stuck with me. I couldn't give up, not on James, not on our marriage, not on myself. About 2 weeks after James caught me, he came home with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Can we talk? He asked, setting them on the counter. Of course, I said, my heart pounding. We sat at the dining table, the wine untouched between us. I've been thinking a lot, he began, about us, about what happened, about what we've been through. I braced myself, unsure what was coming. I'm angry, Emma, and I'm hurt. But I also know I love you, and I don't want to throw away everything we've built together. Tears streamed down my face as I listened. I love you too. Jim, more than anything. He raised a hand. This won't be easy. If we're going to make this work, we need counselling together and individually. And I need complete honesty from you, no matter how hard it is. I'll do whatever it takes, I promised. He nodded, though his expression remained serious. One more thing if I catch you lying again. We're done. No more chances. Understood, I said, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. Rebuilding our marriage was slow and painful. The counselling sessions forced us to face our deepest fears and insecurities, and some days it felt like we weren't making any progress. But gradually, we began to heal. There's no tidy, happy ending to a story like mine, just hard lessons and the hope of redemption. I don't know what the future holds for James and me, but for now, we're still standing, and that's enough. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. Your attention means more than words can express. Stories like this are complex, raw, and deeply human, and I hope it resonates with you on some level.